Hey, it worked out. Again, persistent phase off. Thank you all for joining me, for taking the time out of your busy schedule with your family, friends, people who are taking time out of their family worship, their personal and me time with for work. Thank you for joining me. And I feel like we need to talk. And when I say we need to talk, we need to talk. Sometimes when people pull you to the side and say that it's not necessarily something good, it may not be necessarily something bad, but oftentimes it's something we need to hear or they feel they need to say. And it's one of those. This is relationship season for a lot of people. It's relationship season all year, but there are those who observe. And for some people, they feel lonely this time of year. Holidays tend to make people feel that way. And when it is something where it's something where people need to make connections, and this time of year highlights that. And that's hard for a lot of people. For some people, it's a time of year where they reflect on their lost loved ones, people who've had loved ones pass. Um, and for others, it is a time of having had to let go of someone that they loved and cared about, but realized it just wasn't what it needed to be for them emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually. And that's a big one. And the reason that's one of the reasons we're having this conversation today about prayerful prioritizing. A lot of times we make connections because of desperation. We start to feel like we're getting older. Or let friends have someone. It's natural to need human connection. So sometimes people feel lonely. And out of that, they either cling to relationships or get into relationships that they don't need to be in. And particularly for those who have loved ones that depend on them or they have children, special needs children, or children in general, it's important that we are prayerful in the choice of who we pick or allow them to pick us to be their significant other. And I say that because lots of times individuals have given bad situations a pass because that person had lots of good characteristics. They seemed kind. They were financially what they were looking for. The physical within that relationship that should not have come without being married to that individual and then invested time in that individual because dating does not have to have a physical. As a matter of fact, the reason you're not supposed to have a physical because it will distract you from what should not be. When you have children from an existing relation, from a past existing relationship, there are many people who have allowed people to insert themselves into their lives without being mindful and prayerful of whether this was the individual that needed to be a part of their life for their situation. Yes, it's important to pick someone for you, but you has to include your children because they are a part of you. They came from you and they were a gift. Most people would not allow people to ride in their cars if that person was getting a free ride or even paid for gas, but they abused your car every time you got in it. Every time they got in it. If When they came to the car, they had something to eat and you didn't allow people to eat in your car. They spilling drinks, they spilling food, they just started smoking. You don't smoke. They done burned a cigarette hole in your seat. They shut the door too hard. You will, I guarantee you, most individuals, no matter how desperate that person was for a ride, no matter how much they liked that person or felt that was a good person, if you cared about that car, you invested time in taking care of that car, you had a note on that car, but you would not continue to pick that individual up again. You will make sure that they understood that they would not be riding with you anymore. And you would probably tell them that they needed to locate another form of transportation because you couldn't be it. I knew someone who was a friend of mine, and she told me a story about someone who they were riding with, and this person had a new car. And they didn't want anyone to eat in their car. So she figured it wasn't a big deal. This particular day, she was real hungry. They had been out service for a bit. So she started eating popcorn in the car. I think she dropped 1 or 2 kernels. He had already told her, you can't keep eating in my car. So she thought he was joking. So she just kept looking at him and ignoring him and eating her popcorn. He rolled her window down, grabbed her popcorn, and threw it out the window. That's how you handle that. Some of us need to handle our situations like that. Sometimes you may really care about that person, but they're not spiritually where you need to be. They don't have the same spiritual priorities as you, even if they're your faith or they're not your faith. You want to date with a chaperone, they want to date alone. Your children are not someone that you see them making a connection to, or you don't see yourself introducing your children to them in any near future. They want a relationship where it's not really a relationship, but you're going to pretend in your mind that it is, thereby wasting your time. If you are serious about having a relationship with this person and you don't want to waste your time or put your children in a situation where it's quite clear that they're not patient enough, no matter what they say, or they don't seem to be maternal, or they don't, something about them feels unsafe, you wouldn't continue to invite them to something that may become permanent in a way that will be damaging. Like I said, if you had a car that you loved and you invest a lot in it, the standards you have for people to ride in that car, you generally stick to them. I've known people to not pick you up again if you slam their door too hard too many times. They're like, nope, because you're not going to mess my windows up. Yet we take for granted the significance of planning prayerfully, making sure that who we feel is being sent to us meets the priorities that we have set for ourselves, meets the criteria that scripturally is there, that we need to set for ourselves. The reason the scriptures are there is it's for protection for you, for your family, for your life. See, we'd have a lot less to regret if we paid attention to what information that we are being given regularly. Even if we have bad schedules or bad study habits, because let's be honest, all of us were not studious, and if we were students, it was because we were being forced. We wanted to graduate from high school. We didn't want our parents to beat us to death, or you didn't want to live in your room uh, every day and never leave it. So some of us were forced studiously, that was forced upon us so that we could get through our everyday life. But the Bible is not forced upon us. And though we may have busy schedules, it's important for us to try to take time out of it. And those of us who claim that we live by it need to not let others sway us in the direction of doing what they want. Because I always say, and older people say it, I won't be hungry if you choose not to eat. No matter what is provided informationally, advice that it's given, there will be nothing more important than the Bible. And those that direct you because you're their friends, or you don't want to hurt their feelings, or maybe they have a good idea, or you're interested in them, or you don't want to hurt their feelings, nothing that they're giving you will cover your life if things go amiss. But the Bible never misdirects us. And when it comes to our children, we have to make sure that we have their interest at heart when we're picking a mate. I've known individuals to be in relationships where their children were harmed because they decided that they could let go. Eventually, maybe they'll get better. Maybe they'll become more patient. They're just having some issues with getting along and understanding them. Is this what you need? What we want sometimes is not what's best. That's why we don't get everything we pray for. Sometimes what we want isn't something we can handle. And our Heavenly Father already knows it's going to go way different than what we expected. And maybe we're not prepared for it, or it would be soul crushing to get it. Because you may get what you want. Sometimes you get no. And the reason you're getting no, not just because that person that care about you, maybe you're not the person for them. Sometimes you want to give people what they need and want, but because you love them, you're actually protecting them. See, that's what we do for our children. When they want to do something that we absolutely know is going to go poorly, we do not give it to them, or we warn them, or we instruct them, or we remove it from their possession. And they may feel that they are prepared for what it is they're asking for. I'm going to tell you a story about my mom, how she got her nickname. Now she's going to get mad, but I'm going to tell you anyway. She probably ain't watching. She probably in the bed already. Um, when she was little, they come up in the era where they chop their own wood and things of that nature. And she wanted to show her mom that, like her older siblings, her brothers and her sister, usually the guys did it though. She could chop wood. So she got the axe. I don't think she had any shoes on either. And my grandmother told her to put the axe down. She was 5. She was 5. And my grandmother said, put the axe down. And she said, Mother, I can do it. Let me show you. And my grandmother pleaded with her to put the axe down as she got to her. But before she could get to her, my mother picked the axe up and swung it down and chopped her toe in half, straight down the middle. To this day, they call her Chippy. Now she has her toe is intact, but it grows like a tent because of the injury. Now it healed, but not without a permanent scar and a severe one to this day. And my grandmother happened to have a friend who was a nurse. So they didn't take my mom to the hospital. They were able to mend it themselves. Her toe chopped straight down the middle, through to the ground, to the ground, straight through her toe. See, sometimes disobedience will scars. Sometimes it'll nearly kill you. Sometimes, for some people, it has. Sometimes it has caused the death of their children. Sometimes it has caused physical trauma and injuries that we can't heal from. And that's hard to hear because most people say, oh, you can heal, time heals all things. Not necessarily. Because if it chops your arm off, you may heal that, but that arm is gone, particularly if they could not reattach it. For some situations, for some people, inviting the wrong individual into their children's life causes lifelong trauma. And it takes their childhood, it takes their innocence, their dreams. Sometimes they have PTSD because they chose the wrong person, because they were prayerful and prioritizing what was important. Your goals and ambitions for your family's welfare is important, whether they're special needs or they're not, but particularly with them because they're extra sensitive. They're stronger and more resilient than we realize, and you can protect them from every single thing. Watching their parent go through a horrible relationship and go through mental and physical abuse is bad. When you know that someone's not right for you, you have the right, no matter what anybody else thinks, in regards to giving them a chance. You picky. You're not ever going to have anybody. I would much rather not be in a situation where you nearly lose your life and your children suffer than worry about what other people think about my selectiveness and whether or not my child will have a mother or an extra parent or extra father by the standards of what other people think. And here's something else that we need to hear. Anything that has happened to us in our past, before you decide to step into a relationship, prayerful prioritizing for your life and family also means that you become whole before you decide to attach yourself to someone else. Because also, you can be the trauma too. If you haven't fixed the things that are going on with you, you won't be an addition. You'll be someone that they are trying to save while you are drowning the both of you. So we have to make sense of it. We have to understand. And it's not easy. Being alone isn't easy. But being tethered to someone that you're hurting or that's hurting you while your family watches is devastating, not just for you. Even if that person doesn't physically hurt them, the trauma of watching your parent be verbally or physically attacked injures your child. I'm going to say that again for those who didn't hear it in the back of the room. Having to watch your parent be physically or verbally attacked is traumatizing to your child, even if that individual never physically does anything to them. We need to prioritize our own mental health so that also we don't make our children feel responsible for us not having solid relationships. If your child has mental health issues, yes, it is important that you protect them. Yes, you have to be mindful of the kind of person you pick, but they are not the reason that you don't have a relationship. Not being able to attach yourself to just anyone is something you don't need to do, whether or not you have children who have mental health issues, whether or not you have children, whether or not your children are going through a difficult stage in their life and they need more support. It's important that you get what fits for your family. People who understand that when you have something as important as someone else's life in your hands, you have to be intentional in everything you plan and everything you do. So you do need to make it a matter of prayer, even if it's a list, because yes, God hears our hearts, but He also hears what we request. Sometimes we don't know what to request when it comes to our feelings and certain situations, but make it a matter of prayer when it comes to asking for what you genuinely need. But also make sure that you're someone else's need, that you can reciprocate what you're requesting. You should not ask for a mate if you're not prepared to be monogamous, if you're not prepared to be over anybody spiritually and emotionally, if you're not prepared to contribute in any way. If your intentions are only to receive and you have no thoughts on what your role and purpose is in that relationship, you're not ready. You're not ready. And it's okay to not be ready. But don't get upset at other people for not being prepared to pick you up to go where they're going if you're not dressed to get there. When it's time to go, if you're not dressed and they ready to leave, and it's going to take you a while, they still got to go and the clock's still running. So don't be mad about that. Take that as time to give yourself the gift of preparedness. And preparedness is prayerfulness. Pray that you find someone who loves your children like you do in a healthy way, that wants to make your children smile as much as they want to make you smile. Pray for someone who loves you like they love God and they have a relationship with Him where they won't do things or want to do anything that will cause Him shame, dishonor, hurt, or blaspheme against the Holy Spirit. That's important. That's important. That's important. You want somebody that speaks life over your children, that doesn't pick out all their flaws, that doesn't pick out all your flaws. You want somebody who you feel can lead and guide, who can be submissive. If it's the wife, if that's somebody you want to be your wife, don't date anything you don't want permanently. I will say that again for the people in the back. Don't date anyone that you do not want permanently. If you're not gonna have time for them every day, if you don't want to see them every minute of every day, you don't want them. If you don't want to give them your last, you don't want them. If you can't see yourself holding them when they're sad, you don't want them. If you can't give up everybody you know short of God, you don't want them. If you don't want to be broke with them, you don't want them. If you wouldn't stop your heart to keep theirs beating, you don't want them. Be prayerful in who you want. Make sure they love God like you do. Because if they do, they will love you. And they will love your children because they're a part of you. You all have a wonderful night. Be kind to each other. Be loving to each other. Even if you don't feel like you're going to get it back, because people aren't perfect and we're all struggling. Kindness is a choice. Be wonderful. Have a great night. I love you guys. Good night from a special agenda. Good night.